Hello everybody, in this tutorial I'm going to explain to you how functions work in C++. So first of all, I've created a little document explaining how you declare a function, what the different types of return values are, and a little example. And after this we're going to go into the code and actually make some ourselves. So first of all, the declaration. How do you make a function? You first specify the return type. I'm gonna talk about the different return types soon. Then you specify a name, like what name you want to give it. And then between the soft brackets, you specify all of the different attributes necessary inside of the function. And then of course you end with a semicolon if you're doing a forward declaration that I'm going to talk about soon. Or you don't do that, but you use the curly braces in order to create a scope in which the function will be will be the function. So like in this example, between these curly braces is the function. Everything outside of it, it's not part of the function. Okay, the different return types. Well, the basic return types that you have is, for instance, void, integer, float, boolean, double, or a class, which we're going to talk about next episode, or different kind of things like arrays, which we're also going to talk about soon. And this is a little example. So I've created a function that returns a boolean, so either true or false, and it's called is number 6. So is this number equal to 6? And you give it a number. And then I have created a little if statement that checks if the number is equal to 6, and if that's true, then it will return true. So the return type, since we've specified bool, we can return true or false. And so in else I'm going to return false. But if this was an integer, so return, let's say, return number plus 5, then we would have to specify. Then for in this case we would do return number plus 5. So whatever return type you specify, you need to return that to using the return keyword. Just like we had in our main function. I think we had that in the previous tutorials, that we ended with return 0. I might have forgotten that, but that's something that you should always do. Give it return type the main function. But why do we use functions in C++? Well, for instance, if we have a lot of different things, like we have a lot of different enemies that all need to do the same thing, like we all need to check if they're colliding with something, then it's way easier to just make one function that checks collision and then pass in the enemies in the environment, for instance, than to like hard code the like the collision checks for every single one in your main function, since that's going to be a lot of code that is all just redundant, and we can just make a function for it and then a for loop, for instance. So that's one of the reasons why we're always using functions. The other reason is if we're using classes, since classes are highly dependent on functions. Everything inside of a class is accessed via functions, or at least, well, all the things, if you want to do something inside of a class, you have to do it with a function. And more of that will be explained in next episode. So let's now dive into the code. So I've created a little new project in which I'm going to explain to you the different types of functions. So first we need to do of course the return 0, so we know that there's no error. Always give it a return value. I probably forgot last episode. So let's now create a function. In order to access a function inside of our main loop, we need to specify it above the main loop. So let's create a function that greets somebody. So let's create a void, since it doesn't need to return anything. Void greet person. And then in here I want to specify, let's say I want to give it a string, like the name of the person. So we create an std string, or we can do using namespace std, so we don't have to specify std anymore. So we give it a string, and let's give it a name called, just name, since it's a person's name. And then we use the curly braces in order to open a function, And then in here we're gonna use the console out. Let's do a hi, and then name, then an exclamation mark, and then an end line. By the way, someone in the comments asked me if you could use another function called printf. So I'm also going to give you guys a brief explanation on how printf works. So you have printf. It's a function, standard in C++. You don't need to include anything, I think. Maybe iostream, but I don't think that you have to include anything. And then between the soft braces, this is a function, so we have to give something inside of the soft braces. We can specify whatever you want, but there is one fancy thing when it comes to printf. So for instance, we can do print a number, but in printf we can't just do like the push in a number. That won't work. We can also can do plus a number, or actually it will work now, but the fanciest thing that you can do with printf is you can give it a comma, so specify it as a second parameter, and then inside of here we can use %, and then whatever type it is. So let's in this type is an integer, so we use an I. You also have an F, and I think you also have a B and a C for character. So in this in this case it's an I, so we use an I, and so now it will replace the %i with whatever we specified. And what we can actually do right now is still type after this. So now it will just replace this %i with the 4 in this case. So it's a pretty fancy function, but I like the cout, so the console out, a little bit more since it's easier to use. So, you can do it with printf if you want to. That's no problem. Okay, so now we've created our function. So let's now greet someone. So we call the function by typing in a name, greet person, and then we specify a name. So it's a string, so we use the double quotation marks. And let's give it a name. Let's think of a name. I've got Link on the wall, so let's say Link. And then if we run the program with Ctrl F5, it's the first time that's building it, so it always takes a little bit longer. Then you will see that it says hi Link. Okay, so we have a function, so let's now create another one. Let's say we only want to greet specific people and otherwise like not greet a person. So what we can do is we can create a new function. Let's give it a bool. Make it a bool return value, like want to greet, and then once again a string name. So now between the curly braces, we're gonna have I think a switch. Let's make a switch. Or can you not have a switch with? No, you can't have a switch with strings. That's because it's a class. You can't have a switch with it. So we need to use an if statement and else if statements. So if name is equal to, let's say Link, because we want to greet Link, then we return true. Else, let's just create an else for now, return false. So what we now can do is we can create an if statement with inside of that want to greet, and then in as parameters Link. So if you now move greet person into here, we will only greet the person if the name is specified as Link. So as you can see now it says hi Link, but let's change this to Bob. We don't want to greet Bob. Bob is a bad person. I'm sorry if anyone, any of my viewers is called Bob. It was just an example. But as you can see now it doesn't greet Bob. But let's say Bob is also nice, so we're gonna add an else if statement here, and that his name is equal to Bob. Then it will also return to true. So now if we call this function again, it will also greet Bob. But hey, what is this? I want my main function to be a little bit at the top. I don't want, if I have a lot of different functions, to scroll all the way down just to get to my main function. There is a way around that. What we can do is we can forward declare a function. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take this entire function, we're going to copy it, or I use Control X, and then we're going to paste it down here. But in order to make this work, what we need to do is we need to copy the first part, so the bool want to create string name, so whatever the function is, what it returns, and what attribute it has. We need to copy that, and we need to paste that up here with a semicolon at the end. So now and only now we can use this function properly, otherwise it might give us errors and it might be weird. It might do weird stuff. So use the forward declaration if you are using a function, for instance, in your main file. So we're going to do the same with greetPerson. And now we can run the program again, and as you'll see, it will still work. So we're going to greet Bob. Okay, so now we've forward declared functions, we've created functions. Let's now create a function that depends on a function. Yeah. So let's create a function, for instance, a void called autoGreet, and it takes the string name. And what this function will do is, first of all, actually we have to copy it so we can create it down here. What this function will do, it will call an if statement with with one to greet with a name, and then if it's true, it will greet a person. So basically what this function does is a wrapper for this if statement. Such functions are going to be really handy when we're going to work with classes and we're going to do stuff like give enemies health, but we only want it to be able to see the health and not to be able to modify the health outside of the class. Then we can use some sort of function, a sort of wrapper that returns the value of the health, a copy of the value of the health, so it doesn't return the health itself, so it's not modifiable. Okay, but let's now go into our main function and call autoGreet on Bob. We're also going to call autoGreet on Link, and let's also call autoGreet on Jack. Oh, not Jack. Okay, if we now run this program, you will see that it will greet Bob and Link, but not Jack, because we specified that we only want to greet Bob and Link. So this is my tutorial about functions. I hope you learned something about it. And next episode, we're going to talk about classes. So be ready for that.